If you have continuous fetal monitoring, you are more likely to have a C-section. So if you would like to avoid a C-section, you're going to want to watch this video because this is the Cesarean Trap series where I go deep into everything you need to know to avoid the unnecessary C-section. And in this masterclass, I'm going into trap number 11 on my list, the continuous fetal monitoring. So if you are brand new to me, then you're going to want to continue to watch. And if you are already familiar, then you'll want to skip right to the Cesarean Trap itself. What you need to know about this series is that I'm going to go layer by layer into how this is a trap, why a lot of moms don't see the trap coming, how our medical system and birth culture reinforces this trap to be seen as normal, and how to avoid that trap, both through the typical tips and tricks that are already out there, as well as the empowered birth method itself. Because you've been taught what to think, but not how to think about it. And it's in not knowing how to think about it that we often get tricked. We get into information overwhelm. We don't know what to trust. And we get into this fear trap of, well, what if something goes wrong? I can't just say no to fetal monitoring. And then this reinforces the idea that we either have to say yes to the medical system or say no and risk something bad happening. The empowered birth method is the bridge. It allows you to come to your birth from a place of power instead of a place of fear. Now, if you do want to know more about the cesarean traps themselves, then I suggest you check out the Cesarean Traps playlist on the YouTube channel. Go to the first video in the series. This will give you the overview of the trap. This is especially helpful if you are new to empowered birth and you've never heard of me before. The other thing I'm going to suggest if you are brand new to me is go check out my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, because that is going to give you the overview. I have a policy here at Empowering Moms. Information is free, and I only charge for access to me. That means that you can piece together all the content and you can create your own course out of that, or you can go through one of my self-study programs. I don't take on everyone as a coaching client, so this is basically how I was able to give back and ensure that moms get the information they need while I still protect my time and energy for the moms who need me most. The other thing is that if we gatekeep information and don't freely put it out there and don't also share our own unique perspectives on it and what we've seen, this then reinforces the idea that fetal monitoring is going to just keep being a thing in birth, and it's going to continue in mainstream, and there's going to continue to be that fighting aspect to it. You see it in the mom groups all the time, and I will be talking about that more inside this video. The reason I'm going to be focusing more on the cultural side of things in this video is because I already did the breakdown of how fetal monitoring is a trap. So you can go and check out that video if you go into the Natural Birth Traps playlist. That is season 2 of the Empowered Birth series, where I already talked about fetal monitoring and the additional resources. In this one, I'm really just going to be focusing on what the trap is, why moms fall into it, understanding the birth culture and our medical system of how this keeps happening, and then ultimately how to apply the empowered birth method. So this is going to be a shorter masterclass than a lot of the other ones that I typically run. Usually, if I've already spoken at length on a topic, then the video will be shorter. And if it's a brand new topic, it's going to be longer. So if you want to get the most out of this, I'm going to suggest you watch these videos through at least once. I'm also going to suggest that you take the deeper dive and go check out the additional resources that I mentioned within the video itself. And definitely check out the Natural Birth Traps and the Essential Tips series, because that will help you plan and get the birth you want. You can also go and get my paid program, Your Empowered Birth Academy. This is where I break things down into a more concrete roadmap for you to follow, with the idea that you would be aiming for a hands-off birth and calling in medical intervention only as needed. Fetal monitoring is a medical intervention. It is not something that would typically happen if you were free birthing. Therefore, it is a medical intervention. So when you are looking at natural birth, your best bet is to always look at the holistic side first, because that's the physiological side of birth. And then you look at the medical side, and then you put those two dichotomies together. One book that I find to be most helpful for this in understanding both lenses is Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage by Rachel Reed. It's one I reference a lot. And the reason is because of the way that she has broken down the history. She has broken down the cultural aspects of it. She has broken down the medical lens. She has broken down the physiological side of it. And then she's essentially showed you how to put all those pieces together. And then when you combine that with what I teach with the Empowered Birth Method, which is the psychological side of things, then what this allows you to do is come to your birth from the place of power, no longer from a place of fear. So now we're going to go into this cesarean trap itself. So what is the cesarean trap for fetal monitoring? It's essentially this. You go into the hospital and you're strapped to the fetal monitor. And because you're now strapped to the monitor, you can't move around freely, or you maybe have that telemetry thing, but you keep losing the heart rate of the baby. And then they're like, we can't find the heartbeat. We need to readjust the monitor. This happens quite often. And when they can't find the heartbeat, that can instill panic. In addition to that, it can also be really annoying to have to keep getting strapped to this monitor. The reason it was introduced, and I've mentioned this in previous master classes as well, is because they wanted to reduce the chances of cerebral palsy. This did not happen. In fact, all that really happened is that C-section rates increased and moms were having their births more managed, because it's easier to look at what's on the monitor than it is to pay attention to the mother. So you're strapped in the bed, your nurse is paying attention to the monitor, and there are false positives, which means that your baby may not actually be in distress. However, the monitor is picking up that the baby is in distress. And if that continues to happen, then they are more likely to suggest a C-section. And nothing could actually be wrong. However, they use that strip to justify the C-section. So that is the trap, and that's what that trap looks like. Why you can't see that trap coming. So why do moms not see this trap coming? Because it has been so perpetuated in our birth culture. It is being perpetuated within the medical system. You see it in the mom groups all the time. And there's this idea that the monitor is safe. Better safe than sorry. So the idea is you want to be on the monitor, especially if you're high risk, so that they can pick up whether the baby's in distress. The reason why the monitor is needed if you're having a more medicalized birth is the same reason why you would want to be watching for problems with any intervention. When you introduce intervention, you are no longer having a physiological birth. If you are no longer having a physiological birth, then that is when things can go sideways in ways that your body didn't anticipate and your baby didn't anticipate. This is why it's really important that you aim for a physiological birth and you only pull back as much as needed. Because if you are introducing interventions, you are going to need additional interventions and monitoring for that. That is, again, something I talked about deeper inside of the video for natural birth traps on fetal monitoring and things to consider. So go and watch that for the deeper dive. So you have this monitor and you are now afraid that something's going wrong. You're now paying more attention to that monitor than you are your own instincts. So then when your doctor is telling you, well, your baby's in distress, instead of tuning into your instincts, you're looking at the monitor and being like, yeah, I heard the decels or whatever on the monitor. It's also very distracting. So how do you avoid this? Well, simple one, don't agree to continuous electronic fetal monitoring unless your hard lines in the sand have been crossed. Go into the hospital at the last possible minute, and you are less likely to have that monitoring at all because you're pushing your baby out. They don't need to strap you to that monitor. If you are having a more medicalized birth, such as an induction, be aware that the fetal monitoring, you may want to just try intermittent monitoring first, not being strapped to the bed right away, because that will help your process move further along. If at some point you do recognize you have to be on the monitor the whole time, maybe it's really high risk, then be aware that there is a chance that you could have a C-section and have your plan drawn up ahead of time of when you would feel that it's necessary. Learn to tune into your intuition and instincts first and be able to ignore the outside information coming in. Always go through your own lens first, coming to a place of power, not a place of fear, because the medical system can and will project their fears onto you. So applying the empowered birth method is simple. Aim for a true natural birth, pull back only as much as needed, get the education on the risks and benefits of fetal monitoring. Again, I did a video on this. You can also check out Rachel Reed's book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage, Ina May's book, Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. Hensi Goer's book, The Thinking Woman's Guide to a Better Birth, actually has an entire chapter on the risks and benefits of electronic fetal monitoring. And Rebecca Decker has done an article on evidence-based birth on fetal monitoring as well. So you can check out those resources and recognize that you don't have to have this. Just because you're having a hospital birth, just because you're high risk, does not mean that you have to have continuous electronic fetal monitoring. There is a trade-off that happens when you start giving up your power to interventions. So you always want to be the one in control of when you bring in those interventions and recognize other interventions that can lead to that, such as induction, such as epidural, such as Pitocin, such as breaking your waters. Those are things where you would want to monitor the baby. If you have other complications, those are things where you would want to monitor the baby. But if you're having a completely natural birth, fetal monitoring, not needed. Okay? Not needed. It wouldn't happen at a free birth. It's not necessary in the hospital. The next thing, of course, is that you need to have your partner on board with this. Because if your partner thinks that the fetal monitoring is necessary, then when the medical system starts suggesting it and putting all of that fear, your partner is more likely to try to convince you to just do it, just for the baby. And they kind of count on that. The medical system really does count on that your partner will be able to get you to see reason, especially if it's a Category 5 care provider. Go watch some of my other videos on Category 5 care providers. There are some inside of the Natural Birth Trap series. That's season 2. And I also talk about hiring the right care provider and birth advocacy in the Essential Tips series. And then last of all, you want to hire a care provider who doesn't believe in automatically having you monitored. So hiring the right care provider is really important. And through the Empowered Birth Method, I teach you about how to be the birth consumer. So again, go and watch some of the birth advocacy videos within the Essential Tips series. If you like something a little bit more structured, then your Empowered Birth Academy has an entire module on becoming the birth consumer, and you can go through that program. Go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/academy, and that will give you the overview. Okay, so now you know the empowered birth method, and you know a little bit about the resources that you're going to want to get, and you know the psychology of why this continuous fetal monitoring keeps happening and the fear involved. So let's quickly recap. What is the trap? The trap is essentially the second they strap you to that monitor, you're more likely to have a false positive, decels, and be told that you have to have a C-section. It also restricts your movement. It also causes a lot of anxiety. So recognizing that, first of all, the other side of it is, why don't moms see the trap? Well, because continuous fetal monitoring is so common. You see it on TV, you see it in movies, you see it in the mom groups. This is something that the medical system does as a routine practice, especially in larger hospitals where they're trying to monitor too many people at once. The more they can get moms on the monitor, the more likely it is that they can just look at the screen instead of going to each individual room. And then finally, the problem with this is that it's more likely to lead to a C-section. So how do you avoid it? Go in at the last possible minute. If they don't have to monitor you, you aren't on the clock, they don't have to worry about it. What they don't know can't hurt them. Don't agree to continuous electronic fetal monitoring unless you have actual reason to have it. And again, you can go and check out the Natural Birth Trap series where I did a deeper dive on electronic fetal monitoring so that you can know what those things are to consider, because I did go deeper into that. Finally, get your partner on board. Get past the fear that you need to have fetal monitoring. Make sure that you are the birth consumer. Make sure you're hiring a care provider who's not automatically defaulting to the machine, because that is going to help you to not have this trap. This is a very easily avoidable trap. This is not like some of the other traps that are more insidious. This one's very simple. You just don't agree to continuous electronic fetal monitoring unless you truly need it. And as mentioned before, when you are having a physiological birth, you don't need intervention. It is only when you interfere with the physiological process that more interventions start to cascade down on you. And if you are inducing, that is a chance you're going to need the fetal monitoring, because induction is messing with the physiological process. Same with Pitocin. I will be going into Pitocin in later videos, so stay tuned. And I also went into this deeper in the Natural Birth Trap series. So that's pretty much all I have for you on that. As I said, this was going to be a very short video. If you want the deeper dive, go check out the Natural Birth Traps. And if you found value in this, please like, share, subscribe to this channel, pay it forward, pass this on to other moms. A drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves. Enough waves can change the tide. And here at Empowering Moms, I'm all about changing the tide. So have a happy, empowered birth journey, whether you're birthing a baby, birthing a business or a creative project, or birthing a movement. Empowering Moms is here to be your guide. If you want to know more about what we have on offer, then go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. Consider subscribing to our deep dive newsletter that comes out every single week. I have a segment on empowered birth wisdom and empowered mom magic, because the deeper you go with empowering moms, the more treasures that you'll uncover. So thank you so much for watching. Next week, what we're going to be talking about is trap number 12, breaking your waters. This is going to be a deeper dive because I haven't done a deep dive masterclass on this particular trap before. So you're going to want to tune into that. And in the meantime, just check out the rest of the masterclasses on the channel. Consider subscribing to the newsletter. If you do want a deeper dive and to get the complete overview of how to apply the empowered birth method, and you'd like some additional support as you're going through program, then go check out your Empowered Birth Academy. If you have any questions, email the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, and we'll get back to you within 3 to 5 business days. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Namaste.